I don't really view my transition so much as being from a man, which I never was very good at, to being a woman, which who knows if I'm good at or not. I view it more as a transition from pretending to be what I wasn't, playing parts that weren't written for me, being afraid, and being reactive in ways that were not my choice, to being what you see is what you get.
What do you really know about people who were born transgender? Have you ever met someone who's transgender? Well, if you're like me, you're curious but hesitant to ask questions. Well, welcome to Demystifying the Transgender Journey. In our conversations with people who were born transgender, their families, friends, and the professionals who support them, we ask probing questions and discover insightful and educational answers. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. Now let's get right into today's episode. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. I'm your host, Lynn Murphy, founder of Women Who Push the Limits. And your co-host today is Wendy Cole, who is a transition mentor and a fabulous change coach. She transitioned when she was 67 years old, and she will be helping with the conversation today as we ask our wonderful guest all about her life. So thank you for joining us and for being part of this project, which is to explore powerful stories, unique perspectives, and authentic journeys. And we're interviewing people who were born transgender, their family members, their coworkers, healthcare workers, and allies, people who support them. And we are doing everything we can to humanize the transgender experience and to mitigate the misinformation and disinformation and some of the cruelty that out there in this world, with the idea to open some minds. So come to this with an open mind and pay attention to the conversation and join our Facebook group so that we can continue to educate you more. So today, Wendy and I have a rare opportunity to interview a fascinating woman. She says she's extremely unconventional and that she strives to be anything but normal. To us, she's exceptional. And she has given us an introduction to herself. So I'm going to read her introduction as is. I usually kind of do my own, but this is really fascinating. So this is how she describes herself. She says, I'm a person of lifelong curiosity, something of a curiosity myself. I've followed several professions in my life and ended up developing technical training curricula and materials for a major corporation in the healthcare field for almost 20 years. I'm now retired, living by the ocean, not as I originally planned, as the love of my life, whom I was with for 50 years, died of cancer. So here I am at this end of my life, determined to make a better job of being a better human than during the first 2/3 of my life. So Emily, thank you for joining us today. I love your introduction of yourself.
Thank you for having me.
And just to give a little perspective for the audience, you're in your late 60s?
Nearly 70.
Nearly 70. So is that like when you were a kid and it's like, well, I'm almost 5, it's like that milestone, right?
When you get to be over 80, you always say, I'm going to be 81.
Yeah. You want that hope, that positiveness, or 103, whatever it takes. So you also transitioned more recently, is that right? And
Well, I began originally in 2011, but I didn't have very good reasons. And I was searching for something that would fix me. And being trans doesn't fix you. If you are trans, you are trans. It's not something you can just put on like a coat and walk away and now you're all better. That doesn't work like that. And I went away from it because I became disillusioned with some of the underlying philosophy, or might even call it theology, that went along with the trans stuff, some of the extremist positions and so forth. And then, of course, that person who I'd been with for so long contracted cancer, and that took over. And I did that for 6 years.
Yeah. We'll hear more about your life with your wonderful wife. Let's start out, though, talking about your childhood. You came from a very interesting family and came by your feminism genetically.
Yeah, I'd say so. My father died when I was 3, so my widowed mother, who worked all the time, And my two older sisters who lived with us raised me. And in our household, Gloria Steinem and the other feminists of the day were common knowledge and topics of general conversation. And feminism was right up there kind of with gravity as what's true. And the theory in our household always was that apart from minor physiological differences, men and women were the same, human, human. They all had the same possibilities. They all had the same ability to have the same talents and skills, and they should be able to pursue the same ambitions if they want to, and neither should have privilege or obstacles in their way. And if they did, that was wrong.
I think you're the first person we've talked to who wasn't totally socialized and brainwashed into the binary. Did you feel different as a boy?
Well, I felt for a long time, if I'm alone in a room full of men, I always feel like maybe I'm in the wrong room or that somebody's going to find out I'm an imposter and ask me to leave. And I don't think it was because, 30 years ago, I felt that I was a woman, but I think it's because I grew up with women. That's who I socialized with. The only time I was with a mixed group was like at a demonstration or a march or something like that, which is an entirely different social experience. And so I would be the only person of my sex in a particular room full of women. I felt fine. I knew what I was expected of me. I felt perfectly at home. Nothing bad was going to happen.
Didn't freak you out.
No.
You were at home.
Yeah.
So you were raised with those kind of values and those kind of principles, feminism being on the same level as gravity as far as truth, which is interesting. So what happened when you got out in the world and found out that it just is not that way out in the world?
Well, among other things, I met a lot of women who had precisely the opposite experience out there in the world, as many women did and do, and heard a lot of stories that had a lot of corollaries with the things that I grew up with in the civil rights movement. Well, this is a civil rights movement. Feminism is a civil rights movement, and there are direct parallels in every way. My own dear wife, who at the age of 16 got a full scholarship to Cambridge University, but it came with a condition that her stepfather would have to pay 25 pounds a month, about $40. And he wouldn't do it because she was a girl.
Oh,
If she'd been a boy, he would have done it in a hot minute. But
what did he tell her?
he got her an apprenticeship as a hairdresser. So she took a cut and pay from being on the dole to go work 60 hours a week in a hairdressing salon.
That was the prevailing attitude back in the early parts of the last century, especially men.
Yeah, how sad.
My father cut my half sister off in her freshman year of college because she was a girl.
The college I attended in England was founded in 1586 and accepted the first 3 women undergraduates in 1974.
Wow, that long.
And boy, did they have stories.
I'm sure they had stories.
Awful lot like those black children in Arkansas that first high schools. I mean,
So when you got out in the world and you saw how it really operates, how did that affect your thoughts and feelings about yourself?
I saw my purpose as providing a livelihood for my family, and I worked hard, and I had lots of different jobs. I worked as a contractor for years and years and years. And, people would say things like, how can you work as a contractor and not get any benefits? What happens if you get sick? Well, I guess I die, So I worked, and then I came home and I worked some more on the things we were doing. We spent a lot of time working with our children and getting them started in life and so forth.
How many children did you have?
4 boys.
Oh my, 4 boys.
They all live together in the house that we built in Sultan, so that's a good thing.
Okay, and you and your wife maintained your sanity with 4 boys to raise.
Oh, yeah. Largely by making them extremely self-sufficient.
Yeah. Did you raise them as feminists?
Decidedly so.
Oh, wonderful.
We also raised them as rather very extreme anti-racists and anti-fascists.
I wish more people would do that, but thank you for that.
We had one time when there was a whole crew of workmen doing some work on our house, which needed to be done. They were about a third done. And we heard them telling N-word jokes on the porch. My wife went out and said, "Okay, you're done. Pack up. You're out of here. Gone. Bye."
Did she tell them why?
Yeah, no, I don't want my children hearing this. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't do it, and I won't have it in my home, and you're leaving.
Good for her. Good for her.
It took us 3 months to find somebody to take their place. But that's okay.
It was a lesson for your kids. Very
Well,
important lesson for your kids.
yeah, but of course they got all that crap at school, but we tried to counter that.
Yeah. So during that part of your adult life, did you know you were transgender? What did you know about the transgender experience?
I knew I wasn't operating correctly. I suspected that I was very afraid all the time that anybody would see who I was and actually discover what I was about. I only had one confidant and I lived with them, and that was it.
It's very common to live with that fear, and we're forced to hide. I found it a very painful, depressing, anxiety-ridden feeling. You the same
Well, yeah,
or similar?
I had the additional compound damage of being named after a very eminent orthopedic surgeon grandfather at the Mayo Clinic. And somewhere along the line, when I was a tiny child, I decided that I had either an obligation or a destiny or something to follow in their footsteps. Well, those weren't my talents. I tried for the first third of my life to do that, but it didn't happen because even if I had become an orthopedic surgeon, I probably wouldn't have been a very good one. And that wouldn't have been any good. But then I punished myself for the next bunch of decades for failing to become somebody I could never be. And it's a bad place to be in. That's a ride you want to get off of.
Did that have to do with your gender dysphoria or with something else? You mentioned the word broken, that you thought you were broken.
Well, I was unhappy with who I thought I was. And back in the days, I mean, I'm sure Wendy will say this as well, in like 1965, you want to be a different gender? Why don't you want to be an eagle? Just as possible. It just wasn't on the radar, it wasn't in the realm of possibility. So back in the 20th century, at least, I never ever considered that this kind of thing was even a remotest possibility. Just you can't do it.
Right.
It doesn't happen. Well, it does actually. But what you consider possible is one of the things that will set the expectations you have for yourself. And mine were set wrong, and I had to find out how to reset them in the right direction so that I could live a positive and honest life that allowed me to be happy with other people and be who I was. And that's it.
So there were times that you were happy.
Oh, sure. We did good things. I accomplished good things. I got awards. I got degrees. I got all kinds of things. I mean, I did good work.
Yeah.
And the children made me happy when they got good things happen to them. Oh,
Well, and you mentioned when we talked earlier about growing up that your mother was Quaker, not necessarily hardcore, but you said
pretty hardcore.
you said something about Quakers doing works
Mhm.
and that was part of your adult life. Is that, you want to fill
Mhm.
us in a little bit on that?
My works for a large part of my adult life were raising a family. That's pretty much what I concentrated on, that and doing good work at work. So those two things went together. And I neglected a lot of the outside kind of work. And I thought about that recently. I thought about one of the last long conversations I had with my mother before she died, which was in 1997. And she said, there's a line in life that we're challenged to cross. And behind that line, it's safe, it's comfortable, it's easy. And across that line is helping other people, speaking truth to power, taking chances, defending people in need. and all those kinds of things that you really need to do. And it's scary to cross that line. But the more you cross that line, the easier it becomes. And you've got to do that, or you have no value to your life. I lived for sometimes decades with, I did lots of things, but there weren't any people in my life. So I don't remember anything. Nothing happened. And I realized that rather late, but
So when did you, if we use that same image, when did you cross the line to exploring the transgender experience and doing something for yourself? When you're talking about civil rights and those types of things that you're helping other people, but when did you start helping Emily?
well, back in 2011, I took hormones without medical supervision, I might add, for a time. And when my wife found out I was doing that, she said, well, that's all very well and good if that's what you want to do with your life, but you're not going to do it with me. So I stopped. Before I stopped, I thought I was beginning to see over a horizon I'd never seen over before. Like there were important things I thought I saw that I thought I needed to know. But after I stopped, I couldn't see those anymore. And at that point, I didn't know, did I make this up because I'd been doing something stupid and people do that, and I'm people, or was it real? So it wasn't until after Lynn died that I found myself in a very, very bad place, somewhere between never again and not for you, and death would be kind of nice. But I made Lynn a promise. I said, I will be there for our children after you're gone. So I had to keep that promise.
Yeah.
And in keeping that promise, you have to find some direction, some goal. So I thought, let's go exploring. Let's go find a real doctor and get on hormone replacement therapy in the proper way. And let's go chase those things that you thought you saw. Well, I found them. I found a lot of things. I changed my whole concept of the relationship of myself with the rest of the universe because it changed in me ways I understood myself in the universe. And along the way, I realized that I'd hated the name of my grandfather, which was never my name. And Henry, Emily, that's real close, but it does make a difference. And I have friends who changed their last names and sometimes their first names too, because they didn't want to be known by the last name of the guy who bought their ancestors at auction. So, although a name is just a legal fiction, I mean, your name doesn't make you taller or better looking or smarter or any of those things, but it makes a difference in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Emily was who I was and who I wanted to be in the world and who I could be, really myself, as opposed to all the people I pretended to be all my life. And that's a different kind of transition to suddenly decide, hey, I don't have to be afraid of these people. There's nothing bad's going to happen. They see you, they see you. They like you, they don't like you. That's all that happens. I was running my whole life away from things that didn't exist.
Yeah. A lot of people do that, don't they?
Yeah. The number of people who stay in jobs that they absolutely hate and which grind them down to a nub because they're afraid to leave them because they find that they never get a good job, never get paid as much. Well, that's crap. If you're doing good work, someone will pay you for doing something and about the same amount of money. But people don't believe that because the work environment is structured to make you not believe that.
Yeah, to hold you captive.
What you were encountering is something that we all encounter, is the struggle with our own beliefs, because that's the limitation on what is possible.
Well, and I always believed myself to be an individual atom of creation. I was a special little critter in the forest. And there were other special critters in the forest, don't get me wrong. I wasn't a complete narcissist. But on the other hand, I was separate and distinct and unconnected to any other human beings or any other part of the universe. I was my own separate thing. And then as I took hormones and explored, I found that my concept of myself changed. I didn't feel to be that special little critter in the forest. I felt more like one of the trees of the forest. And that's a completely different way of seeing how you fit in.
That's a powerful shift.
Yeah. And, like there's this tapestry of everything and everyone that was and is and will be, and you're a thread. So I'm connected to you and to you and to them, and they're connected with me. And we have a common ground. Intellectually, 20 years ago, I could even write that down on paper as a concept, but I didn't feel it inside.
Right.
It wasn't my world, and now it is.
And until we feel that, we don't go forward.
Nope. That's why I didn't have anything to remember for 20 years.
So if we go back to 2011, when you said you were transgender, how did you know? What exposure did you have to that concept?
Well, I read Gender Odyssey and other books like that, and I went online, and there was lots of stuff about it here and there and sundry and so forth. And we went to the Gender Odyssey in Seattle and experienced that conference thing, etc., and saw different people expressing their transness in different ways and so forth. And we learned what we liked and agreed with, and what we disliked and disagreed with about that movement at the time, which was quite a while ago.
When you say we, are you saying you and Lynn did that?
We did that together. We did things together.
So she knew what you were going through. Talk about that piece of the relationship, because that's really important. A lot of spouses just don't want to have anything to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
One
Exactly.
of the things that Lynn and I always disagreed with the traditional psychiatric view of humanity is, if you want to do this, or you do this, or you want to do that, or you do that, this doesn't make you a man. That doesn't make you a woman. All these things make you human.
Mhm.
And so all these people saying things at Gender Odyssey, oh, I knew I was a woman because this or that exterior something that they did or wanted to do, wanted to wear dresses or like to play with dolls. What difference does that have to do with anything? That's not who you are. That's what you like to play with. I like to play with everything. Just but so a lot of people firmly believing in stuff that really had very little foundation. And, people do that. And it's one of the aspects of humankind that's challenging and sometimes a little depressing. But I basically decided back at that point that, yeah, I really wanted to stay with Lynn. That was much more important to me than anything else. And those other things, well, I didn't know. I was unsure. So why base your life on things you don't know?
So she explored with you. She
Mhm.
talked about this, but she didn't want you to transition. So what was going on?
She wanted me to transition for the right reasons.
Oh,
She
okay.
didn't want me to just do it because I liked how it sounded or it looked good.
So
Yeah,
it wasn't just a piece of clothing you could put on.
no.
And Wendy always talks about the inner work, that you have to do that inner work first.
We went to Pride in Seattle one year, and I wore a dress, and she wore her standard uniform of t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. And people that we passed clearly indicated that they thought they knew who the man in our relationship was, which was Lynn. And okay, I don't care.
Yeah. People making assumptions.
We shared a lot together in terms of control and decisions and so forth. I mean, that house in Sultan, everything that was in it was where it was because Lynn put it there, and that's where it belonged. What got planted outside, and what we did here, and what we did there, and where we went, and what we did. Awful lot of those things were Lynn's choices, and they were my choices too, because she made good choices. So, why not do those things? I don't see any reason why not. But I do regret that I didn't transition a long time before properly for the right reasons, because I could have been such a better partner with her than I was.
Oh.
And it's a great regret to me. For example, I went out and I got education, I got degrees, I got certificates, I got qualifications, I got all these other things. Lynn, who had really wanted to be a biochemist or maybe a marine biologist or something like that, it never occurred to me that it was Lynn's turn.
Oh, okay.
Why not? She didn't ask to go. I guess she thought that that door was closed in her face and she wasn't going to go that route. And that's a perfectly rational, reasonable choice for her to have made for herself. But I never asked her. It never occurred to me that it was Lynn's turn. And, who was that did these things? It doesn't feel like me.
That's not who you are now, but that's all the process that we go through, those growing experiences and looking back and saying, geez, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. It lets you see all the things you did wrong.
Well, you were just responding to all the social norms that you were trying to embrace and embodied to hide your secret.
You said that your decision to finally get medical help, you talked to Dr. Petra, that was after Lynn died, is that right?
Well, for a couple of years before she died, she would say, you're trans, just admit it. You know you're trans.
So she was supportive when she said she wasn't going to stay with you, or
Well, for the wrong reasons and without medical help.
Yeah.
That was ill-advised, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I was the principal breadwinner for the family that everybody depended on. And you're jeopardizing that through this rash and medically ill-advisable thing you're doing. And that seems like extraordinarily selfish of you. So if that's the way you want to run your life, that's fine. But
so at that point, you didn't talk about doing it the quote right way.
no, because it was, it's kind of, this way or that way. And I chose this way.
Yeah.
As opposed to that way. And that was a good thing, because there's nothing worse than doing even the right thing for the wrong reasons, because you never end up in the right place.
Yeah.
Back in the day, a lot of people damaged their health by over injecting estrogen. And we didn't get the real medical support until the second decade of this century.
And I knew enough about medicine that I also had to, kidney function tests and liver function tests. I monitored things as well as somebody can without any kind of official licensed medical practitioner at your shoulder, doing the best I could to make sure I wasn't damaging my body for all time.
Good.
And Emily, you talked earlier, and I'm trying to tie this together here. You talked about when you started taking the hormones without medical advice, that you saw things, you experienced things that you weren't sure was real.
Well, I thought they were real at the time, but afterwards, when I stopped taking them and I didn't see them anymore, I couldn't decide whether I'd made them up to justify something stupid I've been doing or whether they were real.
So what kind of things are you talking about so that we can, educate people to understand what was going on with you?
Different ways of seeing, different ways of understanding stuff, revelations about things I'd thought about before, but now saw in a new light, that kind of stuff. I mean, it wasn't anything particularly shiny to anybody else, but it was shiny to me.
So perspective.
Yeah, it was important for me to know these things because I felt like, I'd been looking for a path out of the morass that I lived my life in. And I thought somebody turned on a light and now I could see a path. And I hadn't gotten there yet. I was just starting out. But then the light went out.
When you restarted estrogen, did those feelings come back or is it different?
Not exactly as I was anticipating they might. They came in differently. I have my favorite analogy of, if you take a lemon and you cut it in half through the middle with a sharp knife, and you're going to cut through a whole bunch of seeds because this element has lots of seeds. And some you're going to cut through straight through the middle of the seed, some you're going to cut through the end and so forth. And you look at the two sides of the lemon and you see exactly how it looks. And then because it's my thought experiment, we're going to back up time. We're going to take the same lemon, we're going to cut it through again, slightly differently, but still through the middle and still through all the sections. And we're going to cut through some of the same seeds, but not in the same places. Some seeds we're going to cut through differently, and we're going to miss some of the seeds we cut through the first time. And you look at the two sides of the lemon, it's still a lemon, but it looks different. And if you take those seeds as ideas that happen to you in your head, either when you're just sitting there and nothing's happening, or when you react to something, those ideas, the thoughts that come to your head are different thoughts than you had before. And so you see things from a different perspective and you understand things in a different way than you did before, and you relate them together. I found I was far better at connecting the dots. Before, I was far more focused on this or that or something else. I saw that in great detail, but I didn't put them all together. And now I was doing that. And that's a big difference in how your mind works.
So you went on HRT again. And did you start living socially as a woman at that point?
Yes, somewhat. Not at work, because I was still working for 6 months before I quit. Out from under that awful manager. But I was Emily. I had not changed my name as yet. I had not done any of the legal things yet. But I was living me and just being myself far more than I ever had before. I wasn't being overt about it. I wasn't making a statement of it. I wasn't challenging anybody to tell me that I was different or wrong or something. But I was gradually falling into the person that I am now.
Were there any firsts as a woman that you remember?
Well, I guess looking the way I look and sounding the way I sound and not having any hair, I'm most often assumed to be a man. And you talk to somebody and they treat you in a particular way. And then they maybe begin to wonder. And then they decide, oh, you're not a man. And then they treat you differently.
And then you experience what women have always experienced.
Yes. Oh, boy.
Uh-huh. Well, and for our audience who's on podcast, they don't know, but you don't have hair, or you shave it off, or
I shaved my hair off substantially. Lynn was a professional hairdresser, and she cut my hair for 45 years until she couldn't anymore because she was dying of cancer. So I started cutting my hair with clippers because I could do it myself. It was easy, cheap, and I don't look like I've been attacked by a beaver. So, and it's also true that when you've been with one particular person who's the love of your life for half a century, when they're gone, you don't really want anybody else. So if I am, for many people, less attractive as a prospect, result. Good.
That's not your goal.
No, please. If I ever got with somebody, I would just try to turn them into Lynn, and that would be a train wreck.
Yeah.
You should never do that to anybody. So let's just not go there.
So we're not looking for a romance here.
No.
Yeah.
Romance, I can read a book or watch a movie.
Did you have a support group, a support person, a support animal? I mean, how did you get through this transition period?
Well, I've always been rather a loner, an introvert. So, I talk to other people. I shared things with people. I have friends that I discuss things with and so forth, and we would discuss things back and forth. But I don't think I had anybody that was particularly supportive. My own children said, well, whatever.
Yeah, tell us about that, because that's always an interesting story, the family story.
They have trans friends. They know what it's about. They knew better than I did back in the day. I mean, they oh, you're trans. Oh, okay. There you go.
Did that happen after 2011 when you were just exploring it?
A little bit. I was sanctimonious and stupid with it too for a little while until I got over it. But no, I don't think I imposed it upon anybody else that I lived with in that way.
But were they, when you say imposed, they were aware or not aware of?
Oh, they were aware,
Okay.
Children watch you. They see what you're doing. Oh, they're putting on nail polish. They never did that before.
Any conversation about that kind of thing?
Oh, not really. They were very accepting. It's like in their group of people that they have as friends, you're gay, so what? You're trans, so what? It's kind of like being a Democrat or an independent. No, not okay to be a Republican, but apart from that.
We'll all agree on that one.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So probably due to the way you raised your kids,
Mhm.
that
Yep.
we talked to a grandmother the other day and asked her what happened when her grandson came out. She said it was kind of like shrug,
Mhm.
okay, so what? You know, just be easy with it.
It's interesting. It's interesting too. People, okay, there's people who just accept you as being a woman, and there are people who accept you as being a trans woman. And
Hmm.
a lot of well-meaning, very liberal, um, proud to be a liberal kind of people, they have a special niche that they treat trans women as, that they're especially um, careful what they say and how they act and what they do. And sometimes if they make a stray comment that they later regret, they come to you afterwards and they apologize for it.
And so, what's your advice to those of us who screw up periodically?
Oh, well, people are people.
Yeah,
That's a good person. That's a good person. Cool. That's all you really need to know. And should
yeah.
you treat them any differently because they're a trans woman or a trans man or whatever? I always hearken back to that wonderful story I heard from a trans man about walking down a residential urban street, the only person on their side of the sidewalk, until a woman turned the corner and started walking toward him. And as she was walking, she looked up and saw him approaching. And she did the thing where she took her bag and pulled it a little bit and moved over on the sidewalk. And he's sitting there thinking, wow, I've become the enemy.
Mm.
Because he remembered doing that when he was a woman.
Right.
Mm.
You know, wow. And I like she, hers pronouns, and I'm a woman in every way that makes sense to me. Um, but I believe in my case, it's because of all those prejudices and all those stereotypes that people have about what women are and what men are. And men are bold and aggressive and strong and controlling and manipulative and dangerous. And women are nurturing and helpful and collaborative and passive and mostly harmless. Well, of those two, I'll take that one. I'm mostly harmless. And that's the role I want to fill.
Are you claiming those other identifiers though?
No, well, they're all wrong. I mean, we know that those stereotypes, there are always more exceptions to those than there are examples of them. So why people consistently act as though they were true is a quirk of human nature I would love to have explained.
Well, the stereotypes are based on something, but people tend to filter out things that don't match what they're trying to,
Of course.
what they believe. And
Mhm.
so they build up that stereotype based on faulty input, really.
A
Yeah.
lot of shared beliefs throughout society that
Yeah.
aren't definitely not true.
And when people have really bad experiences with men, there's going to color their idea of what a man is. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the beginning, you talked about the way you were raised, no differences between men and women, everybody's human.
none that mattered.
As you're out in the world, though, and seeing that even now as a woman, yeah,
Yeah.
you see that differently.
Well, and also, I don't know that you can take my internal journey of transforming my hormonal balance and extrapolate that to the rest of mankind, but I am a different person than I was, and I think differently than I did, and I react differently than I did, and I feel differently than I did, not less or more, but differently. And does that make me think that maybe there were other differences between men and women that do follow from your chemical makeup in your body? Maybe, but I'm not sure. And I'm not willing to say that personal experience of mine can be extrapolated to the rest of humankind. That's very bad statistics. So don't do that. But
That was your experience.
my experience is that, maybe some of the ways that I react to the world and experience the world did have something to do with the being bathed in testosterone. Maybe that did have an influence on me formatively and as I was living my life. I don't know. Maybe I was more focused on particular things and I remembered other things better and I remembered these things worse. And I wasn't as good at putting things together as I am now. And, maybe all those things are together. Or maybe some of these things that I'm experiencing are due to the fact that for the first time in 50 years, I'm on my own. I don't have this other very capable, much more intelligent person to lean on. So is that a factor in all the changes I'm experiencing? I don't know, but I like not being afraid.
Well, yes, you talked about that before, thinking you were broken and being afraid of people not seeing who you are. And
Or
now,
seeing who I was, and then terrible things would happen. Catastrophe. I don't know what, but catastrophe.
and did it happen?
No,
No.
it's like first time you're out in the world and you're wearing a dress and you've never worn a dress before, and you think there'll be some kind of consequence. Well, there isn't. People don't give a shit.
So what happened the first time you were out in public in a dress?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
No,
Shocking.
nothing. It's just like we're going out wearing a hat.
And so did you log that in your research file and say,
It's one of those demonstrations. Yeah, you should really do things. And anytime you find yourself being afraid of something, try it. Some things you should be afraid of, like cliffs, and don't go too near the edge. Don't fall off. A lot of times, what you're afraid of is far worse than what's actually.
yeah.
You manufacture things in your own head to be afraid of, and they're far worse and far scarier and bigger dangers and more horrible monsters than actually exist in the world, in reality.
There's a lot of people that when they start their transition, they are afraid that by doing things that are different, that will help them go forward, that they're going to break things from their past. And what they don't realize is that staying stuck like that is actually going to break them.
I also have a lot of history that I've studied over my lifetime. And those two women who rode motorcycles across the United States in 1918 and got arrested in 4 cities for wearing trousers.
Yes. That was even back in the 60s. If we appeared in public in a dress, forget it. You're in jail.
60s and into the 70s too, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. My mother-in-law had a lot of lifelong friends who were lesbians because she was put in a mental hospital for depression. And most of the women in the mental hospital were lesbians. They were there because they were lesbians.
Yeah. And the men are the ones who put them there because they didn't fit the mold.
Nope.
And that was what they were going to do with me, is stick me in a psych facility.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, like the first gay man that I ever knew was a student at my school. He was a couple years older than I was. He was an amazing man. He was a National Merit Scholar. He wrote beautiful poetry. He had a full scholarship to Princeton. And he came out over the Christmas holidays to his parents that he was gay. So they had him committed and they cured him.
Oh, good. Oh, they found the cure.
And they released him. He had no sexuality. He also had an IQ of about 40.
Wow.
His mother drank herself to death in a year, and his father shot himself in his study with a picture of his son getting the National Merit Scholar Award on the desk in front of him.
Wow. Sad.
And all that
These are the good old days they want to bring back.
Yeah, make it
Ooh.
horrible again.
We don't want to go there. No.
You're thoughtful, you got the heart. How has being transgender expanded your understanding of just being human?
Well, feeling more connected with other people and understanding that not everybody sees themselves as a separate and viable unit of creation, but as a part of a bigger something, and connected with other people is a revelation in terms of how I understand how I should react and work with the rest of the world. So that's a big change. And that filters through to a lot of other unexpected areas and ways. You read the same book you read 20 years ago again, and you read different things out of it. It's got different messages you didn't see before.
Yeah. You weren't a place to take that in. But unexpected messages, what are some of the unexpected lessons in your life?
Oh, well, I mean, let's see. It's really difficult for me to watch the early episodes of MASH because it's so sexist.
Mm-hmm.
No, really?
Oh, yeah.
We watch reruns of Barney Miller, and I do the same thing. I just cringe.
That was the way it was.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The way it was.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what are some other unexpected lessons?
Oh, having been wrong about myself, I can see how other people are wrong about themselves, and you want to give them even more of a break than you gave them before. Understanding that, people can be afraid of stuff. And if you're afraid of stuff, it influences everything else. And even if that thing they're afraid of has really nothing to do with you, it can in their minds.
So are you dealing with fears differently now than you did before you transitioned?
I have in the world is providing me with a lot of things to be afraid of.
Yeah, it sure is.
Other than those, I don't have a lot of things to be afraid of. I mean, I'm comfortable. I have things wrong with my body, but not anything really serious or life-threatening at the present time, I hope.
Well,
But
not here too.
I could very easily stay behind that line and just be comfortable and happy and play with my pet. And, it's always yard work, but other than that, that's the worst burden I have to bear, I guess. But on the other hand, I'm meeting a lot of people around here that are in causes. And when we finish talking today, I'm going to head out to the Social Security office to stand on the street with signs saying no cuts to Social Security and Medicaid, all that. So
Good, thank you. Well, what is it that makes you happy?
what made me happy? Accomplishing things, same as always. I mean, yeah, accomplishing things is good. I like to write. I like to sing. A pet that I play with, and she's cute and makes you feel good.
What kind of pet?
Oh, it's a python.
A Okay, Emily, when you were talking about cute, I was not picturing a python.
Wow.
Okay. And does the python have free run of the house?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
Because pythons will get in places you can't get them out of, and they
Yeah.
do not come when they're called.
No, no, no. They're not that trainable, I don't think, are they?
Yeah, like a bird.
But is this python affectionate?
It likes to snuggle.
Really?
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Well, they like to squeeze, don't they?
That's right. It's
Well,
the body heat.
She's been learning how to give me neck rubs.
Okay. As
Yeah.
long as she
You
doesn't.
drape her over your shoulders, and she sits there and massages your neck.
Okay, as long as she's not coming around this way.
Well, she's still very young.
Oh, well, okay. So you're training her.
How big is she?
Oh, let's see. About 20 inches long, about as big around as my wrist.
Okay.
I could get her out and show her.
No, please. Thank you. That's fine. That's not I'm just
Still
thinking,
a baby python, though.
Someday, well, I mean, she'll outlive me, so she's in my will. Someday she might be 4 to 5 feet long.
Right.
okay. If I turned around the corner in the house and there was a python there, not in a terrarium, maybe in a terrarium, you'd hear me screaming all the way to Oregon.
Uh-huh.
And Wendy would hear me in Pennsylvania. So, oh, well, that one surprised me. So now I'm going to ask you, what surprises you about your life?
Oh, let's see. I still find it far easier to procrastinate than to get things done.
So nothing to do with your gender.
No, not really,
It's
not.
the human thing, we keep
Yeah.
coming up to that. You're talking about just being human.
Mhm.
It's
Always been human.
yeah.
Still a lemon.
You're just cutting it a different way.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting just to think of quite a transition that you've made. And at an age when you were mature,
Mhm.
you'd lived all those years in one particular style.
And when people ask, which isn't very often, I say that I don't really view my transition so much as being from a man, which I never was very good at, to being a woman, which who knows if I'm good at or not. I view it more as a transition from pretending to be what I wasn't, playing parts that weren't written for me, being afraid, and being reactive in ways that were not my choice, to being what you see is what you get. And me,
Yeah.
I'm Kelly, pleased to meet you. Glad you're having a good day. And how can I make it better?
Mm.
You've gone to who you've always been.
Yeah. And, hey, ooh,
And that's what all of us do.
yeah. And if the world didn't have these stupid things going on in it, it would be absolutely great.
Mhm.
So as far as acceptance of yourself, we usually talk to people about self-love. That always comes up somewhere. Has that changed since you transitioned?
I have different regrets.
Okay, tell us about those.
Like I said about Lynn, and the things I didn't do
Yeah.
the right way about that, and the fact that I didn't transition a lot sooner, because I could have been a far better, well-rounded and helpful partner,
Mhm.
equal partner, more than I was.
So do you think if you transitioned earlier, you might have changed, you might have all of a sudden decided that then, give her the opportunity to go to school. Do you think that would have changed because you had more feminine qualities?
No, I don't think so. And I think that she probably would have turned down the option of the time I'm thinking of. Let's say like only, 10 or 12 years ago, she was too late for me. We're not going to spend the money on that. We're going to spend it on something else.
Mm,
It's one thing to spend money on your education because your education translates into money
yeah.
much more directly than my education would, but I don't know if that's true or not because she was a truly brilliant person. And if she had gotten into a STEM field, who knows what she could have done with that. And it's a loss to humanity.
But look at what a wonderful life you two had together.
I think so. We agreed about all kinds of things. For example, we spent most of the money that we saved up for our retirement on educating our children so they would start out life without any debt.
Mm,
Because starting out your life with $80,000 or more in debt is just nuts.
yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
do this.
Well, and to have 4 children to do that for, that was quite an investment.
It takes a whole chunk of money to do that.
Yeah. So you had those priorities
Mhm. Yeah.
and it worked out.
We had no disagreement about that whatsoever.
Yeah. I know sometimes people talk about the differences between my husband and me, and we've been married 49 years. And I say, we disagree about things, but we have the same values.
Yeah, same
It's
value.
those underlying values is what makes the relationship work. And it sounds like you two had definitely
Mhm.
similar, if not identical, values.
And those times when I didn't listen to what Lynn's advice was and did something different, it didn't work out well.
See, there you're doing research.
Not because of what she did, but because she was right.
Mhm.
What would you tell your younger self? And I don't mean just the thing you said that you would transition earlier, but let's take you back to your childhood. What would you tell that little Emily in there?
Well, stop trying so hard to come up to other people's expectations.
Mm.
When I was a child, if you offered me a chance to be just like your sisters, I was a big deal. Why? Man, there's no change.
You
So
didn't
she
have
got
to
an
be.
Indy and I got an Audi.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, as far as I was concerned back then. And lying may work in the short term, but in the long run, it's kind of a bad idea. Don't do it.
And you talked about lying.
Mhm.
You were lying about who you were? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, lying who I was and making stuff up and, whatever supported the assertion at the moment.
Yeah. To fit in.
Yeah, and to uh, earn people's respect and admiration, if you look at it that way.
Yeah. And to hold on to your job so you could support your family. It's,
Yep,
you
all
know,
those things. Yeah.
all that works together in life, doesn't it?
Yep.
So, what do you want people to understand about being born transgender?
That that's not much different than being born anything else. Just be who you are, and damn the torpedoes. Growing up, the only standard that was kind of true in my family was the great horror of being normal. You should be exceptional. That's what you ought to be. There's no excuse for not being exceptional.
Well, you are exceptional.
Okay, yeah, let's like all those other snowflakes. Yeah,
No, but everybody's kind of normal in their own way, but your experiences are unique and you had such a fascinating life, Emily. I mean, I'm sure it
yeah,
wasn't all roses and rainbows, but we go through this in our human experience. That's my belief anyway. And learn some lessons.
yeah. Just don't miss the connections with other people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
don't live without people because you want to have things to remember.
And are you living more with people now than you did before? I mean,
I've
other
got
than
people
Lynn?
around here that, when I leave here today, I'm going to be going out on the line in front of the Social Security office with some of them.
Yeah.
Mm. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're aware of that anyway. Maybe earlier in life you weren't as aware of the need to make that connection.
And on Sunday, we all got together and did a potluck. We'd had a taco bar, and I made black beans. And everybody said, "Oh, those are the best black beans." Nobody wanted the recipe, but
So, Wendy and I have come together as a cis woman and as a transgender woman to explore this and to educate people, allies. What advice do you have? How can we build bridges across this great divide that seems to be going on right now? And what can we do on this podcast? And what can we do as individuals and cisgender people as individuals?
don't be afraid. Meet people. People aren't afraid of people they know.
Exactly.
If they meet you, if they see you, I mean, it's like, all the people who are afraid of Black people don't know very many Black people, do you?
True.
And there's other societal systemic things that are wrong with society, and we all can agree about some of them, and we can disagree about some of them. But don't let this disagreement stand in the way of commonality of the things we do believe in common.
That's very wise. Thank you.
That's another H.L. Mencken thing I always liked. The older I get, the more I distrust the idea that age brings wisdom.
Oh, and I was hanging on to that one as I get older.
No, sorry.
Oh, Emily, you just disabused me of one of my favorite beliefs. Every year of my birthday, I think, oh no, I'm just getting wiser.
Mhm.
Well, just don't believe your own press.
Okay. So anything else? Any other words of wisdom?
Just be who you are and forget the rest. It's not going to hurt. It's probably true that nobody's out to get you unless you've done some other things that have nothing to do with who you are. There's one story I would add that I haven't said yet, which is a Dick Gregory story. He was a very popular Black entertainer in the 60s.
Mhm.
He talked about going to Manhattan and negotiating multi-million-dollar entertainment contracts. And when he'd go into these spires of steel and concrete in Manhattan, he
Mhm.
always rode in a freight elevator. Because as a Black man, if he rode in the people elevator and a white woman were to get on the car with him, she could say that anything had happened and he could lose his career. He could be in jail. He could be killed for this. Wasn't worth it. So I always rode in the freight elevator. And for a lot of my life, I rode in the freight elevator. I was afraid of stuff. Now, he was afraid of real stuff, but I was afraid of unreal stuff.
Mhm.
And you got to get out of that freight elevator and you got to forge a people's way with other people.
I would add to that, that is typical for so many people in our community. They're afraid and they can't get out of their own fears, which are not true.
So, Emily, how can people reach you? Because I know people are going to want to find out more about you.
I have WordPress where I put poetry. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the two best places.
Okay.
There's Facebook, of course. I'm on Facebook too, but mostly for finding out about current events and meeting different people from different places.
Yeah. We'll put those in the show notes so that people can find more
Thank you.
about you.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Emily. This has been fascinating conversation. I knew it was going to be. We've been waiting a long time to interview you and really appreciate you sharing the incredible story that you had.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
Well,
you're
and-
also an example of there are no rules in transitioning.
No.
Just be who you've always been.
Mhm.
That's a
It's
key.
like cooking. Cook what you like, cook it right, use the best ingredients.
Then I want to thank our audience for being here today. This has been another wonderful episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey with Emily Meyerding. I'm Lynn Murphy, your host. Wendy Cole is your co-host. And remember to like, subscribe, share. Oh, you want to share this, of course. Help us build this channel up and help more people get educated about what it means to be born transgender. And as we always say, we will see you next time. Tune in, stay curious, and stay kind. Thanks for being here. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of our fascinating interviews. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. So until next time, stay curious and stay kind.